Hey everybody, Dr. Trevor Wilkins here, the Viking Therapist. If you're seeing this part, you're probably tuning in later because nobody's on yet, but I tend to avoid boring paperwork with mental health Q&A. So we'll see who comes in, see who's got questions. Otherwise, I have to do what I'm supposed to do. Hey everyone coming in. As usual, this is my attempt to avoid doing clinical paperwork. I'd rather talk to you guys. Nobody tells you in business about the business part. What's up, Juan Solo? God, that's a good name. Thanks for helping me avoid paperwork. I should probably come up with like good topics. Jaren or Garen, good to see you. I should come up with, I just thought of that. Too bad I already went live. I should come up with good topics and put it up there. See if people have specific questions. But as for now, I'm just avoiding paperwork. People will be watching later like, who wants to watch this dude do paperwork? I don't want to do it. I know you don't want to watch it. Cool thing about Facebook Live, or rather YouTube Lives, is if it goes bad, we just delete it. No big deal. Yeah. Yeah, I got out of one profession thinking that was going to be the end of the paperwork, and I was completely incorrect. JMC, good to see you. Yeah, they didn't. I didn't grasp the amount of paperwork that owning a private practice would be. I just want to sit over there and do therapy, but it does not always work out that way. No takers yet. Just gonna watch me do paperwork. Man, don't make me do paperwork. We have some good trips coming up. Oklahoma City's not too far away. They're doing some mental health stuff for the Wounded Blue. If you haven't checked them out, check out thewoundedblue.org. It's a nonprofit out of Las Vegas, started by an injured Las Vegas Metro lieutenant who had to fight to get his pension. And started the Wounded Blue, which is a national support organization for injured officers. So check them out. I'm their clinical director, so I get to travel a lot with them. It's a pretty cool deal. If you live in my neck of the woods, yeah, I swear to you, I'd pay you to do it. I really would. Man, I get worn out on the business stuff. And actually, I don't know, I'll take that back. The business side isn't horrible. It's kind of been this new adventure for me, learning through reading and podcasts and such, but it's the clinical paperwork I hate doing. It's so repetitive. I just want to sit over there and do therapy. I don't really want to do this part, but luckily for everybody, I had a couple of no-shows, so you get the benefit of free talk with a therapist. I can't call it therapy. So, man, you Juan with the big question. So the two things I always say about EMDR, to kind of give the overview, good to see you, Maggie, is Today's dysfunctional emotions, so anger, depression, anxiety, guilt, and the like, that are dysfunctional, right? They're not necessarily wrong, but they're dysfunctional. They're not doing us any good. Today's dysfunctional emotions are created by previous life events that left us feeling helpless, hopeless, or not good enough. And today, those beliefs are getting re-triggered. The other way I like to think about it is, if you're 8 or 10 or 12 or even 15 or 20, and you have a trauma happen to you, whether it be the traumas that people think about, big T traumas, 9/11 car crashes, the the thumbs down. Can't even come in here and say why. Good Lord. So, keyboard warriors. So, if you have a critical life event or a negative event in your life that happens anywhere before today, so anywhere earlier in life, and it left you feeling helpless, hopeless, or not good enough, we come up with our own coping mechanisms for that. Now, they're not necessarily healthy coping mechanisms, but they're mechanisms that work. They're coping mechanisms that work. So, fast forward to today when those same things are being brought up again, that helpless, hopeless, not good enough, then we're using those same dysfunctional coping mechanisms as before. So we'll still have that same issue going on. So until we take care of maladaptively processed memories, we're not going to feel less of those things now when those things get re-triggered. The other way that I like to describe EMDR has to do with the left and the right of the brain. And when you're in REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, your eyes are moving back and forth. That's activating both hemispheres of the brain. REM sleep is when you do it best. So what's going on in REM sleep is the brain is trying to take the chaos information from the right side of the brain. So it doesn't have to be chaos like tornadoes and hurricanes. It could be chaos such as incoming information, and move it to the left side. Kind of put it in drawers, right? If when you were about 16 or so, you learned how to change a flat tire. We don't drive around the highway today thinking about how to change a flat tire. You put it in the drawer on the left, on the logic side of auto repair maybe, or what do I do on the roadside? And when you have a flat tire, you pull that out and you use it. You use that information and you put it back away. Well, what drawer do you put horrible traumas in? And what drawer do you put terrible life events in? Especially early in life when you don't even understand them and don't have a way to cope with them. Well, I would argue there's not a drawer for that. It's kind of like jamming a square peg in a round hole, and they stay in kind of purgatory. So if you've ever had somebody or you fell and scraped your knee on the concrete, it's a raw nerve. You don't have to touch it to make it hurt. Just blowing air in a general direction will make it hurt. Well, that's where these traumas are. They're raw nerves. So when they get flicked, all those feelings of helpless, hopeless, and not good enough come back again. There's some other things associated with that, but that's the major ones I see in my office. So what EMDR does is facilitates that REM sleep at a different frequency. So you're not going to sleep, you're not hypnotized, you don't lose track of where you are, and tries to get them more adaptively processed so they're not stuck right in your face. One of the greatest things I ever heard about EMDR is it takes trauma that's right in your face in color and it moves it back here in black and white. So it's not an everyday event. So strategies to quell the temper. So here's a trick. Good to see you, Danielle. Been a while. Yeah, Pamela, ask away. Absolutely. So that's what we're doing. You're all helping me avoid paperwork. So the more questions I get, the less paperwork I'm actually going to get done. So there's probably to be said that means I have to do it later, but I'd rather do it later anyway. So quelling the temper. So here's the trick about temper and anger. I get that question a lot. Doc, can you give me some coping strategies about how to calm down? Well, here's the downside of that. Kind of a double downside. One, it's what so many people try to teach you is these coping strategies on how to deal with anger. And that's what they rely upon. The problem is if I'm standing in the cabinet slamming, or I'm standing in the kitchen rather slamming cabinets because I'm mad, and somebody tells me to take 5 deep breaths, I'm going down the hallway, slam the door. It's not going to work for me, right? By the time I get to 8 or 10, I'm even angrier. So I don't really rely a lot on what people identify or kind of articulate as coping strategies. My opinion is to use things like rational therapy or EMDR to stop the anger in the first place, to stop the temper in the first place. If you think about the temper side, 2 ways to go. Either one, you're looking at maybe some trauma that's being brought back, some maladaptively processed memories like we just talked about over the last 5 minutes or so, and those are being brought up. If those are being brought up and you're in limbic system mode, you're in fight or flight mode, nothing's going to calm you down immediately. Telling yourself to calm down, or somebody is telling you to calm down when you're in fight or flight mode, is not going to work. Now, there's some truth to grounding, maybe trying to identify where you are, remind your limbic system that you're safe, that you're not in the trauma that you're thinking about. But just talking to yourself or doing these, quote unquote coping strategies is not going to work. The other part of that is, where did the temper come from? Temper's a learned behavior, and that doesn't mean that we should never be frustrated or angry about things, but where did I learn to have my temper so high? Where did I learn to be so frustrated? Where did I learn to react so quickly? Well, there's a lot of different ways this can go, but if you'll think of it in a rational therapy kind of form, the event happens. Then we process that through our basic belief, such as, you will not disrespect me, you cannot disrespect me, or I label somebody, you're a horrible, terrible person, or I catastrophize it and say this is the worst thing and the most awful thing that could possibly happen, or I have low frustration tolerance, which I like to call I can't stand it itis. I can't stand you talking to me this way. The problem is, that's where the temper comes from, and the real problem is that none of those sentences are true. Now, I'm not going to walk around and let people disrespect me or let people harm me or any of my patients, but is it really true that you must not disrespect me? Good luck enforcing that one. Maybe we need to do something about it, find a different job, arrest the offender, whatever needs to happen, but you must not disrespect me. Good luck having that one 100% in your life. I can't stand when you disrespect me or say something wrong. Man, the reality of I can't stand it means it kills you. Right? So the example I always use is, if you come to my office and say, Doc, I'm so broke that I can't afford one more bill coming in. I can't possibly stand it. And you go home and the water bill's sitting on the table, you die because you couldn't handle it. Now, I'm not saying that handling it went well, right? Maybe you have to go without water for a month. Maybe you had to sell something. Maybe you had to move. Maybe some family members had to lend you some money. I'm not saying it went well, but you did handle it. So that rhetoric of I can't handle this or I can't stand it, it's irrational. It's just causing temper. It's just causing problems. Now, again, that doesn't mean I'm going to let people walk all over me and just be okay with it. But I need to evaluate whether these things that I'm thinking, what happens between the event and the consequence, what happens between them is my belief, my filter. And I need to take a look at those. So, yep, seeing some highs. Yep, absolutely. Ask all the questions you want. Man, what a name. Throckmorton. That's a long name to type out. Oh, you bet. Yep. I see your second reply now. Always glad to help. I do stay pretty busy here. I tend to see about twice the national average of patients in my office, so I tend to stay pretty busy. Plus, I teach at a couple different universities, so I'm suspect of being a slow emailer. So, how would someone with severe anxiety, depression, and PTSD see about doing the EMDR? Oh, great question. So, a couple of ways. The easiest way to find a good EMDR therapist, or at least somebody who's trained and certified, is to go to EMDRIA, which stands for Eye Movement Desensitization Reprocessing International Association, so emdria.org. Up in the top right corner usually is a button that says Find a Therapist, and you can use that, put in your information. You can even put it down to what type of people they work with or the credentials that they have, and it'll find you somebody in your area. If you're having trouble finding someone, or you just can't find somebody that's a fit, shoot me an email. It's pretty easy, Dr. Trevor at theangryvikingtherapist.com. So, and I'll see what I can do to help you out. So that is the easiest way. EMDRIA is who kind of controls the certifications and the official training for EMDR. I wouldn't go anywhere else. Ooh, Danielle, that's a tough one. Tips to manage PTSD when forced to interact with abusers in the court. So a couple of things come to mind, I guess. One is the fact that the possibility of seeing them and having to tell that story over again, or having to just deal with court, is re-traumatizing, right? It's one of the reasons that a lot of us don't prescribe to things like, we prescribe to things like reprocessing therapy. Sorry, I should have shut my phone off. Reprocessing therapy, but we don't really subscribe to things like exposure therapy. Now, don't let me knock exposure therapy completely. If you're afraid of an elevator and you took a job on the 30th floor of a building, exposure therapy is how we're going to get you in the elevator. We slowly expose you to you, letting your limbic system know that you're not in danger. But the reason that there's such trouble with things like exposure therapy, such as retelling the story over and over again, which I do not prescribe to, we find out that you re-traumatize yourself. You're just starting all over again. This is why people go to things like the VA, who have great therapists and great programs, but if they're doing exposure therapy sometimes, all I hear is how they sit in the parking lot and throw up and drink a six-pack before they go home, because they're not better. Now, there is a percentage of people that get better with that, but I would also argue that it's a much lower percentage with things like reprocessing therapy or EMDR. So, seeing that individual having to tell those stories again could very well be re-traumatizing. So the first step for me, if I know it's coming up, is to get in somewhere with EMDR therapy or reprocessing therapy. So, the the reason for that is, if we can take the dysfunctional emotion away from that, it's not like you're going to forget the trauma, right? It's not like you're going to forget what happened. But if we can get the dysfunctional trauma out of that, dysfunctional emotions out of that, then seeing that person just sucks. I guess I can say that on YouTube. Seeing that person just sucks, instead of it being a horribly emotional response or a horribly fight or flight response. It's not going to make you like them. It's not going to make the world rainbows and unicorns. But what if we took the dysfunctional emotion away from that? That's going to be a way that you deal with that person in court. The rational therapy kind of way is to kind of decide what seeing them means. And that goes down quite a bit longer rabbit hole, but just seeing them, what label have you placed on them? And more importantly, what label have you placed on yourself because of the trauma? If you've placed a horrible label upon yourself and you think that you're backing that up with circumstantial evidence, some people may say things like, I was too weak, I should have stopped it, I should have known better. Those things probably aren't true, but you want to get in there and find some evidence for or against that. And if that label is not there, then the dysfunctional emotion may not be there. So I hope that helps with court. Court's a tough one too, mainly because you're stuck in this, quiet environment, seeing these people again. So Pamela's chiming in with, I've had a terminal illness. Whew, I hate that for you. In the hospital for 20 days. It's a long time not to be in your own bed. So dream before the last surgery, I was going to come take me home. Man, I feel for you. I never tell people I know what they're going through. I do have a condition that has landed me in ICU for a couple days about every other year. I'm not going to necessarily compare that in any way. I would never do that with somebody. But I understand that loss of control that you have in a critical unit like that or in the hospital. I do believe in dreams. We believe them into the point that it's information trying to get from the right side to the left side of the brain, trying to get from that chaos side to the side, that's put away, the logic side. As far as interpreting dreams themselves, is not something that I find myself skilled in. That's somebody that does like psychoanalysis. I know that's not necessarily what you're asking for, but that's what stuck out to me in the first year message. There's some good in there. Going home, that's a good place to be. But the bad part is the last sentence, right? We can't just trade bodies. Gosh, if we could, I'd figure it out and be rich. But we can't. I'm sure it's hard to focus. There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on in that couple of sentences that you wrote. Word number 4 and 5 or 5 and 6 are hard enough. Terminal illness. So, the hardest part about the mental health side of that is the irrational and dysfunctional emotions that come up. So I don't know your story and I don't know what where you're at with this, but keep in mind that this don't mislabel yourself and don't watch your frustration tolerance. This isn't good. Nothing about therapy should make bad things good. And if any therapist tells you otherwise, you should leave their office immediately. But we can handle this. And here's why I know. Handle it doesn't mean you miraculously get better tomorrow and walk out. That's the only positive solution. Handle this means you handled it, right? That you can stand it. And stand it doesn't mean fun or good or less pain, but it means you did. And I think that the lack of understanding of being able to handle this in whatever form that is can cause more mental health problems. And I hope none of that comes across as a suck it up kind of way, because that is in no way what I mean. But we know that dysfunctional emotion can be caused by things like the frustration tolerance, where we just give up and decide we can't handle it anymore. So, be careful with that. That can put you in a lot worse position. So you bet, Isaac, no problem. Understood from Throckmorton. Thank you. Absolutely, JMC. Shalom, A1P. I need to send you money. Not that I owe you yet, but I need to send you money and buy a radio. I did see the live stream last night with Bear that what did we call Dudley, the hype man, and he upped the subscription. So I hope that does well for you. I did see it pop up this morning. You were working on some radios, so I am a certified or licensed tech, so I need to buy a radio already. Jeez, I keep saying that. I think every time I see your name. So it's funny. I follow a line of people on YouTube that I highly respect, Bear Independent included, and who really push me to get this going, and it's always interesting to see when he's talking, to put people put a thumbs down without actually commenting about that. What a boring life you must lead. Oh, Danielle, you missed a good one. It was Tactical Tuesday during Sukkot, so that entire porch was more full than I've ever seen it. That'd be one I think's worth a rewatch. It's a couple hours long, but good information in that one. I must say, if anybody got to see it last night, that was a good one. Tactical Tuesday she's talking about is a Tuesday live stream that a buddy of mine that goes by Bear, his parents did not name him that, Bear Independent, who makes very quality products for the survival community, does a Tactical Tuesday, and it usually starts out with things like firearms and bullets, and it quickly turns into things like whiskey and talking about the world. So definitely worth checking out. Pyro, good question. So couple different levels here. Asking about working about or about the service dog and how they work. So two areas, and you may be actually talking about a service dog in the manner in which it normally is. The service dog is one that, in my own words, this isn't official, but in my own words, is trained to help you with regular tasks, right? So, or trained in a way to let you know that a seizure is coming on, or maybe an anxiety attack is coming on. So, I am a fan of service dogs. What I usually get asked about is to write letters for emotional support dogs. And while I am a fan of that as well, those aren't service dogs. So they don't get the same, they don't get a lot of same protections that a service dog would. So that's worth watching out for. Service dog's going to cost you quite a bit of money unless you find somewhere that donates those. If you're in public safety, check out the Wounded Blue. They do provide service dogs. There's some excellent, and I'll tell you, one single tear causing stories of, because tough guys, we only admit to one single tear. One single tear causing stories on there about not only my friends who have been injured and completely screwed over by their government, but now I have some service dogs. So there's some really cool stuff on there. Even if you're not public safety, that's worth checking out to kind of see how they can help. They're the kings of that. That's not a division that I work in. I got a couple of good friends that are in charge of that, but I am a fan. Where I think it would be the most effective, and I don't know a lot about service dogs, but this is my PTSD specialist opinion, is, what if that dog's able to identify either dangerous situations that typically set off your limbic system, or situations that, usually kind of get you ramped up. Maybe they can protect from that. Besides, who doesn't like petting a dog to feel better? So I got a note from Throckmorton. Thank you for it. It's my pleasure. I will absolutely check your email. Nope, I'll find it. I don't get too many emails on the Angry Viking Therapist one, so I will definitely find it as I find 7 minutes of free time, whatever free time is. Yeah, check it out, Danielle. You can't go wrong. I know it's not the same. You can read the chat. I did notice, I didn't realize this, that you can get on there and one of the buttons at the bottom of the screen will say live chat. You can read it. And of course, you can't participate in it, which kind of stinks. But you missed some good one. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you from last night, a funny moment. So I was at Bears not too long ago and helped him take a big load of building material to a site. And at that site, there was this sharp right turn that you had to make, and he had like some ungodly 48-foot flatbed trailer or something with 12,000 pounds of material on it. And he did the best he could taking it wide, but he dropped that right wheel off down the ditch, and it stopped, and I heard the wheel spin. I'm sitting in the passenger seat, and I thought, oh man, we hit some soft ground. And he said, nope, trailer in the ditch. And I thought he meant like, oh, it's gotten off level, or we're gonna have to back up. I opened my driver's door and looked back there, and the trailer is in the ditch. So fast forward to last night. I don't know how the discussion got started. I think we were talking about, that lots of us will come together for others that need help in the bear community, and or just in the community in general that surrounds his videos and stuff, or his teachings. And so I said last night, yeah, if I've got a trailer in the ditch, I need help getting out, and hoping it would catch his eye and he'd laugh, and be a moment. Dudley, who's awesome, was sitting right next to him and thought I meant I really had one, and started, no joke, polling people of who was around me so they could come help me get a trailer out of the ditch. So I felt kind of bad. I meant it as a joke. It turned into kind of this like me having to explain. But if you see it pop up about a flatbed trailer in a ditch, I wish I had taken pictures. If you're on his Patreon, you will see the trailer we're talking about. It was a great night of fellowship. That was a good one. I always miss, it's strange because I miss the first hour and a half. I teach on Tuesday nights at a university as a professor, and I miss the first hour and a half. But so Juan Solo, still the coolest name. This might be a tough question, but can someone be mad without being angry? It's probably definitional, but I would say yes. But I would change the word mad to frustrated, right? Healthy negative emotion are things like frustrated, disappointed, sad, remorse. Those aren't good, and we're not going to downplay them, but they're healthy. We can deal with those. I can deal with sad. I can deal with frustrated. I can deal with annoyed. I can deal with remorse. I don't like it. I'm not going to blow it off, but I can deal with those. When they become unhealthy is when sad becomes depressed, frustrated becomes angry, or frustrated becomes rage, nervous becomes anxious, remorse becomes guilt, which the way I describe guilt is remorse. So things I wish I hadn't done or had done differently. And guilt is that I'm also a piece of trash for doing those things, right? That's guilt. So I would argue you can be frustrated, even up to like 9.9 out of 10 without being angry. And here's the difference. Nobody wants to be frustrated either, and I'm not trying to downplay that we should go from angry to frustrated at the snap of the fingers. It depends on the situation, but if it's not worth being angry about, if that unhealthy emotion is not going to do us any good, because let's be honest, we don't make good decisions when we're angry. How do you think I got this name? But you could be frustrated. Up to 9.9. Frustrated just doesn't mean, oh, darn. It could be 9.9 frustrated. At 10 is the angry, and it causes us to, make bad decisions. So, syntax being what it is, I think you could be absolutely mad without having to be over the top angry and doing things you shouldn't do. So, Liberty Micro Farm. When I read that, I think, are the animals small? Is the farm small? Are the products small? I don't know. So is struggling with losing family to the left-wing ideology. When I first read that, I saw struggling with losing family, and I thought, man, that's really tough grief. And then to the left-wing ideology, I thought, man, that's even worse. So family means everything to you, and the pain of having to walk away from some. Well, the easy answer, which isn't always easy, is don't discuss politics and family. There are definitely members of my family that I don't agree with. Politics do come up. What do they say? Never discuss politics and religion. I think the big problem we have right now is that we're so polarized. I don't really remember a time where political ideologies, and I won't even name them because even Republican and Democrat don't mean anything anymore. It's so all over the place, and you know, these different ideologies have got us so polarized. So I don't think that it's the politics that's the problem. Now, I'm not saying politics are good, or people that are or are not in power or may be in power one day or have been in power in the past, you know, that they don't do wrong and harm the country, harm the people. But I don't think politics is the problem any more than going to a difficult trauma is the problem. It's how we process that politics. It's how we process that car wreck. And I'm not saying we go to a car wreck and it feels good and we make ourselves feel good about it, or we feel neutral. It definitely impacts us, but it's up to me how I feel about that. It's up to me how I filter that information to get to disappointed and frustrated or angry and anxious and sad. So it's up to me. So I argue that the problem is probably not the politics, which aren't necessarily good right now. On any side, there's fault everywhere, but it's the ideology, it's the split, it's the labeling, right? Labels are typically irrational. It's the labeling that we do of each other, to you and against you, that causes the problem. And a lot of times we have to figure out whether those labels are actually rational. Doesn't mean they're not correct, but are they rational? So hopefully the word losing family does not ring true in the future, and that comes back. But it is polarizing, absolutely. But again, as good rational therapists, we would argue it's probably not the politics. It's how we filter the politics and how we filter each other's opinion and put labels upon each other. So we're really good at it, us crazy humans. Yep, PJ's sermons have done me well too. So Danielle's talking about one for daughter. So animal made a world of difference. Danielle, if you're still on, is it a service dog or an emotional support animal? I'd be interested to kind of know the difference. I mean, I know the difference legally, but you bet, Throckmorton, no problem. Yeah, no problem, Pyro. Dirty Roofer, another cool name. Okay, look at that. I learned something today while avoiding paperwork. Definition of a microfarm is anything under 5 acres. So maybe small animals would be good too. A micro zoo? Only small animals? That'd be a petting zoo, I guess. Maybe that's already taken. So Rohan suffered from clinical depression, feeling lonely even though I have a best friend available. Well, the most salient thing you said there is the last 2 words. You're right. Life is tough. It is, and that doesn't mean we just pull up our bootstraps. Although that is important to try to better ourselves. But clinical depression comes in kind of 2 forms, and both can be kind of difficult. One is biological, and there's some understanding about different levels of serotonin that may be passed down through genetics, or levels of serotonin due to a brain injury, or levels of serotonin we know get changed due to trauma and stress. So there's the biological side of it. The biological side is only helped by medication. The depression, on the other hand, that's not biological is, the mental health side. So the problem with depression, or at least the definition is, I say, is sad turned all the way up. And the hard part about depression is, I had a gentleman come in one time, and I'll change the scenario a little bit, but he came in and said, I just got divorced, I just got fired, I lost my job, I lost my wife, I lost my house, and I just got diagnosed with cancer, and I think I'm depressed, doc. I'm like, dude, you're not depressed. You have a lot of crap going on. There's a difference between depressed and hard stuff going on, right? So that doesn't mean he may not be depressed, but let's not write that off when bad stuff is going on. If we can fix the bad stuff, if we can fix the activating event, the thing that's causing this, let's fix it. Of course, I realize that's not always the case. The depression comes from, again, those irrational beliefs that get us all in trouble, and we all do it. And when I first started taking classes in rational motive behavior therapy, which is one of my 2 primary modalities, I swear that the instructor was talking to me, because you have irrational beliefs like turning a wish into a demand, saying, this can't happen to me. This absolutely can't happen to me. Good luck proving that one. Labeling, right? We label ourselves, we label other people. Of course, put an asterisk by we label ourselves, because we love to tell ourselves what a piece of junk we are about something that maybe even we have done wrong, but man, we label ourselves so bad. We awfulize things. We make things that are awful and terrible and horrible and the worst thing that could possibly happen when they're not. And we have I can't stand it itis, right? So much is going on that if one more thing's happened, I can't possibly stand it. Well, I heard, quip a long time ago, never ask God for patience, because he won't give you patience. He won't. He'll give you some things to be patient about, though. So, um, you know, uh, I'm not going to minimize your depression as to a couple of talking points by any means, but we know where it comes from, and we know that it's a fixable problem, and I highly recommend help for that. I hate to hear that you're going through it. Lonely is one of those things that really adds to depression. To me, it's kind of an intensifier. If you feel lonely, it almost feels like you can't handle it all yourself. So, Liberty's given us an example of losing family. Nephew threatened to turn you over, and Patriot members for anything you do. Well, I don't know the context of the things that are going on, but I've always said, much like body cams and dash cams in law enforcement, if you're not doing it wrong, doesn't really matter if somebody tattletales on you. So, trained as a service dog, very cool, Danielle. That's really neat. Um, I could really see. Oh, I see you have a description later. So, she can go in a building and tell if anyone's there, alert people to dangers, open and close doors, pressure during stress or meltdowns. Very cool. Very cool. I could absolutely see that being a way. When I think of PTSD, it's limbic system, right? It's fight or flight going off for no reason. And I could absolutely see that being a help. I bet those get pretty expensive too. So you bet Dirty Roofer, you bet Micro Farm with your little animals. Yeah, Pamela, I have a few that bring their emotional dogs in. I'll tell you, I get a lot of questions about writing letters for those. I stay away from the letters, not because I don't care, but there's been a lot of scuttlebutt lately, and like anything else, we just, in this world, we ruin it for ourselves. There's been a lot of scuttlebutt about what constitutes the need for an emotional dog, what constitutes the level of requirement, what is emotional dog, can I have an emotional ferret, people come up with all sorts of stuff. So what I've noticed is a trend of requiring therapists or psychologists or psychiatrists to be especially trained in the need for emotional support animals, at least to the level of having to write papers for clients that may be need it for a place they rent or to go on an airplane. I don't do those, only because I think you have more support going to a psychologist, getting written confirmation, written testing. It just gives you more of backing, I believe. So I usually leave that up more to like a testing psychologist. So Shalom, Jason, in the VA. Good to see you, Ethan. That's right, Dirty. It's so hard. That sounds so easy, but gosh, it's so hard to do. So $30K for the service dog. I have no doubt. I have no doubt that it was worth every penny. But whew, hopefully there is. Hopefully there is some. Financial support for things like that for people. I'd say it's out there somewhere. Matthew's tuning in, writing a book of what you've dealt with. I know that all too well. Overbearing parents, man, that starts as a rough start right there. A narcissistic ex-wife. 5 different. Ooh, that's a lot of mood stabilizers and antidepressants. I'm assuming that they weren't really working, since it says ex-wife and you still call her psychopathic. So I guess they weren't working. So apparently somebody was not helping as far as the medical team goes. So think about overbearing parents. I know that wasn't necessarily a huge part of that section, but Bama, good to see you. I was talking earlier, if you were here, the problem with having things like overbearing parents, absent parents, um, emotional damaging parents, no parents. What we find, especially in a lot of attachment theories, is when you have overbearing parents or you have any kind of dysfunctional family going on and you're young, you don't even have a prefrontal cortex formed yet. All you are is fight or flight. You might as well be a horse when you're young. So all you know is good and bad, safe and danger. So you form these coping skills that work, right? We know they work because you're here, you made it. We're not saying they're not dysfunctional, and most of them are when we're younger. The problem is now when those things came up again, those dysfunctional coping mechanisms tend to come with it. And man, there's a myriad of them that are far too many to name. But if we don't, I kind of think if you don't get a good start to the race, you got to run twice as hard in the last half. And that comes analogy. It comes from a guy who won't run from here to the car. I'm a lifter. Yep. So. You know exactly. Yeah, if you don't get a good start, man, I'm not saying it's not recoverable. It absolutely is. But you're going uphill. I see it in my office every day. Now, I do see people get better from that. 40 minutes in. See if anybody else jumps on and asks anything. Just telling early when I started this, the good thing about it, if it doesn't go well, I can just hit delete. It's just between me and 27 of you. That's it. And you can't prove it. Totally forgot I have a new mic. Could have used my new microphone. 4:12. I'll stick around just a few more minutes. I do have another client coming in here in a little while, but I had a couple of no-shows. I can go all day too, I'm telling you. I'd much rather do this than paperwork. Shalom, James. The fun part about that is I always know where you guys come from when you say that. I hope you got to see the interview the pseudo interview that Bear and I did. It's over 3 hours long, and it was not water in our cups, so I'm afraid to go back and watch it to see if we got a little giggly at the end. We definitely had a good time. Yeah, me too, Matthew, man. It's tough. It's a tough time to find peace right now, though, isn't it? Gosh. Ooh, Michael, that's a tough one, man. Man, you talk about a heart jerker right there. Just lost their mother unexpectedly. A couple things come to mind. One is timeline, right? Of course, there's going to be some grieving. Grieving is completely natural and normal. I would never set a time on grieving, especially for kids. You and I lose somebody as an adult, and we grieve for it, but we kind of know it's the way of the world. We can conceptualize it, right? We can understand that it happens. We may not understand why that one happened, or we may not understand why this person, but we understand we lose people, So the first thing I think about with kiddos is they don't understand that. So, depending on their age, maybe there's some resources out there about how to talk to kids about the loss of the mother, or maybe you're at the point where, they understand that, but they're coping. A couple things come to mind on that idea too. One, and this may not make sense at first, but watch the labels. Watch whether they label themselves or not, whether they try to take some blame, whether they try to label themselves as not a good enough kid, whether they label themselves as wishing they'd have done differently before mom was gone, and I don't know the circumstances, but unexpectedly, in whatever you slice it as tragic. So, watch for those labels. Watch for them making irrational labels about themselves, and it's too early to talk about catastrophizing. It's in any loss like that, it's too early to not feel like it's the worst thing ever. You and I probably both know that worse things can't happen. I don't think that's how I would address it just yet. Maybe down the road. But that last one there, the I can't stand it itis, or low frustration tolerance. They're not going to be able to, depending on their age, conceptualize that they can stand it, that they can they can get through this. Time will do that for them, and support will do that for them. But those are the two big things I'd watch out for. Let them grieve. And if the grieving continues to a point where it's affecting their daily functioning, that's something different. But, be willing to let them grieve, depending on how long it is. And again, I don't know that there's necessarily needs to be a label for that. But keep in mind that watching out for them labeling themselves, and watch out for that they feel like they can't stand it. That would be my first suggestion. I don't use Credible. I'm not even sure what that one is. So hopefully I won't have to then, assuming it didn't go well. Jason. Negative self-talk, man. This is the way of the world right here. But it really goes back to what I was just saying, about these labels. Negative self-talk usually turns into a negative label of self. And although people don't like to hear this, usually an irrational label of self. Let me use an analogy. If you're sneaking through the living room and your spouse or a friend is asleep on the couch, and you're trying to get to the Oreos without making too much noise, so you leave the lights off and you stub your toe. Well, we would agree probably that stubbing your toe would really hurt. And a healthy mental track for that is, ow, that hurt. I'm such a dork. I should have turned the light on. Wow, this hurts. Right? But how many times have we stubbed our toe and said, I'm so stupid. I can't do anything right. This is just another damn thing on the list of damn things that I can't get right. I'm such a worthless, stupid idiot. I can't do anything right. Right? That is that label, that irrational label, because if that person woke up from the couch and heard that, they'd think, dude, you just stubbed your toe. Take a breath, man. I don't think this means you're a bad person. And maybe we have done things that contribute to negative self-talk. But I'll tell you, if it's getting to the point of things like depression, it's unhealthy, it's dysfunctional, and it's going to be irrational, but you have to be willing to debate those and investigate those. If my irrational self-talk is things like, I never do anything right, you know better. It's just the bad things cover up the good things, right? So be careful with that label of self. Be willing to challenge those thoughts that go through your mind. And I know that's not very specific, but if somebody came in and said, I never do anything right. Okay, what's that mean? Well, I failed my exam at school last week. Okay, what's that mean? Well, I'm probably going to get kicked out of college. Okay, that's bad. What's so bad about that? Well, it means I'll have to start over. That sounds terrible. Where is the proof that this makes you a terrible person, right? Because we should be upset about failing a test and getting kicked out of college or whatever that slows down our dream. That's okay to feel bad about. But if our rhetoric is that makes us a terrible, awful, worthless human being, I don't think you have the evidence for it, right? So Throckmorton, good question. What this also brings up, what asking there is dwelling on the fact that there is PTSD. So a couple things come to mind. One is this rhetoric I've heard lately of whether you continue to have PTSD, which is the actual disorder diagnosis, after the symptoms are reduced. I'm still on the fence. I haven't done enough reading on the literature yet, but some argue that you actually fall out of PTSD if you no longer have the diagnosis. Some may balk and say that no, but the symptoms may be there lifelong. They just may not be affecting daily functioning, which is kind of the fifth diagnostic criteria for PTSD, is affecting that daily functioning. So that's my first thought. Do we still have PTSD, or have we gotten to a point where it's not affecting our daily functioning? And if so, whether we label it that or not, so we have PTSD. What does that mean? It's not good. It doesn't feel good. But if we're getting rid of the symptoms, if we're mitigating the symptoms, why is it so bad? There's been a big push lately, not within the medical community necessarily, but more within public safety, of changing PTSD to PTS, just post-traumatic stress, or post-traumatic stress injury. And I understand why people are wanting to do that, but what I always say is the D in PTSD is disorder, not disease. Disorder just means not in order. Things are not in order. It's a disorderly, right? Things are not in order. So, okay, so we have some things that are disorder, and we got some symptoms we need to take care of. And I don't want that to come across in any way as, don't worry about it. But okay, so things are out of order. Let's get them back in order. And who cares what my label is? To be perfectly honest, I wouldn't diagnose a single person with anything if it weren't for insurance companies, because what good does it do them? Let's call it green disease for all I care. Again, that's not to play down the frustration and the symptoms and the difficulty with things like PTSD, but what does it really mean? What am I labeling myself? What am I saying is so bad for it? So, peace to you, Matt. Oh, yeah, man. Matthew, that's what you guys are doing, is helping me avoid it. It was a good one, James. You're right. Oh, yeah, gotcha, roofer. Yep. You bet, Michael. Glad to help. See, I've been trying to convince Bear to get this program because I can see a whole screen of comments instead of his one at a time. Then again, maybe he's doing that for a reason. Yeah, James, that's still really hard things to deal with, but you're right. The fact that they were adults or adult age probably helped them conceptualize that this is a bad thing, that loss, but this is part of life and we're not downplaying it, but at least as an adult you understand. Yeah. Yeah. I get that, Matthew. Sounds like you, Bama. Well, here's the funny thing. I did a talk in out in the Appalachian Mountains. I don't know, about 2 weeks ago, I guess, and just talking about mental health and public safety stress, and EMDR and all the my usual rhetoric. And this lady came up. She says, "It sounds like you were talking about me." And I tell her, "Lady, I'm talking about me. That's how I got here. Was because all this stuff that I'm talking about today is me. I just happened to, go through an educational program that helped me learn how to deal with it. That's all. I'm no different. I'm talking about me." Dr. T from Dr. P. Good to see you. Yeah, Mark. Here's one thing I've always said. I don't know that. I think it's probably up to the individual how they interpret that. But as far as difficult music goes, is that no matter how you feel like you can evaluate whether they're talking about real things or not. I've always said if you soak a sponge in chocolate milk and you squeeze the sponge, water doesn't come out. Chocolate milk comes out. So a lot of times what you put in is what comes out. Yeah, that's a good point, Danielle. It can get to where it's not triggered, and that's that reduction of symptom, right? It's always going to be there in the background, but that reduction of symptom, and specifically to me, where it's no longer affecting daily functioning, that's when I think we get better. Cool, Dr. P. I appreciate that. That's why I do it. I got a face for radio, but I come on here anyway for that very reason. Man, speaking my language, Matthew, you're right. We are definitely polarized, and there's definitely, I don't know that I'm a conspiracy theorist and say there's an agenda behind it, but they've definitely made their money on pushing us apart. Nobody wants to know the good stuff anymore. Bama's talking about some abuse and not dealing with it. Yeah, lots of anger issues. So, you look at the reprocessing therapy side and how those dysfunctional coping mechanisms as a kid can continue today, right? I'm a pretty open book. One of the reasons that I knew I had a problem was me screaming at my kids for tiny things, and I've never laid a hand on them inappropriately, but definitely, and I'm thankful. I'm so thankful that they were young when I was going through the worst of PTSD and traumatic stress. But before getting into this career, after finishing my public safety career. I'm glad they were young because I've had some time to kind of mitigate that. But, when I knew I had a problem was when I was losing things like my kids and my family and my job, because I was reacting in an unhealthy way. And those dysfunctional reactions were coming from earlier events. And a lot of people don't realize it doesn't have to be age 5. It can be age 25 or 35 that those events happen. But we come up with dysfunctional ways of coping with it. They help in the moment, but they're dysfunctional, and then they come out again when they're not needed. So very easy to be angry about that. Very easy. Yeah, good, Juan. Keep working. Keep working. Find you a good EMDR therapist or somebody that specializes in cognitive therapy, like rational motor behavior therapy. Um, you know, Again, I always tell people I sit in this seat because I needed to be on the couch first, and I couldn't find somebody that understood me. So I just made my own seat. That's it. I should have been sitting on that couch getting help, but I couldn't find anybody. The first lady I went to cried when I told her about some of the things I was dealing with, and the second gentleman said that my PTSD and my anger were so bad that he didn't know where to send me and he didn't know what to do with me. So, in all bullheadedness, I went to school, and that landed me in this chair. So I'll hang around a few more minutes. I hate that people are hurting, but it's awfully nice to see people come together. And what's worse, getting a phone call in the middle of a live stream is getting a phone call from a telemarketer. You see the angry Viking side come out. Banging on the drums does help. And doing the things, you're right. CBD or marijuana. So I'll be honest, it's not a strong area of mine knowledge-wise, but I hear a lot of good things. And my thought is, what symptoms are we looking to deal with those? Is it the calming effect? Is it getting rid of the hypervigilance? I'm okay with helping with those things. If you're hypervigilant all the time and you're always stressed and you're always anxious, then it's really hard to get any healing. So if those are things that help with people in staying calm and not being hypervigilant, but they're still going to get help, then sounds good to me. I don't know enough about it to say good or bad. I think the CBD side is still kind of a big question mark. I'm not going to knock it if it helps people, but I don't think we know as much about it as we think we do. I see an awful lot of lists of things that it miraculously cures. So I'm not against it, though. You're right, Melissa. Having a spouse to help you go through it, I tell you, I'm an open book when it comes to this stuff. Why my wife stuck around those years, I'll never understand. She's just a better person than me. So I went and spoke at a conference one time that was local, and she doesn't usually get to go with me because I'm flying all over the nation doing these talks. And so she got to go with me. It was local to our state. And about halfway down there, I get this harebrained idea. Hey, do you want to say something about what it's like living with somebody like me, especially in those rough years? She said, yeah, I'll put something together. And so I was up on the stage, and there's this talk I give called The Real Signs of PTSD. I do it all over the place, so I don't even really think about it much anymore. I just talk and put the slides up. And I invited her to talk, and she came up and talked, and she spoke for maybe 5 minutes. It felt like 5.5 hours because of what she was saying. It was all negative stuff, and she did talk about getting better and healing, but she got off the stage, and I turned around to start where I left off. I couldn't remember where I left off because all I could think of was, man, that dude she's talking about is a jackass. And then I realized I'm the jackass. So yeah, having somebody supportive to get you through that, I give her lots of credit. There was a lot to the EMDR and the rational therapy, but yeah, I give her way more credit. I also play the bass, Juan. We're Rhythm Brothers. Doing about the same from Danielle. Tell you, Roofer does change you, man. 15 years, and I did, and the 3 years before that as a medic and a fireman and a dispatcher. And it changes everybody. There's no way to do that job without changing. I don't think it has to make everybody a lot worse, but it's definitely going to change you because, as you know, just in the years that you did it, it's not like it is on TV. All you see is the worst of people. You see people on their worst day. It has to change you. Man, I got heavy bags hidden everywhere. As a matter of fact, Matthew, here in my office, I'm about to expand another 800 square feet. I'm thinking about making part of it like a punching gym or a heavy bag gym. I'm glad to be here, Dr. P. I appreciate it. The journey was rough, but I'm glad I'm here. Oh, Christy, that's tough. Mom passed away this morning. I don't want to assume, but maybe you weren't allowed to see her because of the pandemic that's going on. That's tough. You're really going to have to rely on this one on faith if you're a faithful person, or if not, finding ways to grieve. That's tough. I feel for you. It's like I told one of the people earlier that had lost some kids had lost their mom. Be willing to grieve, though. It's okay to grieve. It's okay to be sad about this. This is not good. Passing away is, at least here on earth, is not good. We don't like it. It always brings thoughts. But like I was telling them earlier, be willing to grieve for a while. If the grief starts to impact your life later, reach out for some help. You don't want it to impact you too long. There's no timeline on it, but if you know that you're not recovering, get some help. And just as I was telling somebody earlier, watch those labels. Watch those labels. I don't know the circumstances of why you weren't able to see her. I don't know the circumstances of when you got to see her last. But be careful with irrational labels about yourself if you're beating yourself up. It's okay to be disappointed or frustrated about things that I wish had gone differently. It's not okay to have irrational, angry, self-defeating thoughts about it. Okay, next time I'll turn my phone off. Yeah, can't sleep, long day. Yeah, whew. My heart goes out to you. There's no magic thing I can do to make grief feel better instantly. Well, good, Bama. I mean, if that's the symptom that's helping, man, so many people take so many prescription drugs to help sleep. If it's natural like this, gosh, again, I don't want to come across as promoting it or not promoting it. I don't know enough about it to speak intelligently, but if you're getting better sleep, I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of getting more sleep, and getting in that REM sleep and letting that stuff process. Good. Action Jackson's talking about it, managing anxiety and with ADHD. Cool. Good. It's all good information. Yeah, thanks, Melissa. You're exactly right. I've got a sign in my office that says the best healer is the wounded healer. Henry Nouwen, I believe, is the who coined that phrase, and you will see that quite a bit. In that those that are learning psychology are sometimes looking for answers themselves. Matt's talking about CBD helping with anxiety. Cool. See ya, Roofer. Yeah, thanks for that. Farrago? Factory Art? That's a cool name. Ooh, that's a really good question, Danielle. Do you think the preparedness is a coping mechanism or reinforces the fight or flight? I'll say, I'll tell you, just for me personally, I think that it helps with the fight or flight. Being prepared in the event of a disaster, whether it be man-made, whether it be nature, being prepared for that stuff, I think takes the edge off for me, knowing that me and mine will be fine. And the reason I think that it probably helps is in the same way that if you're, dealing with traumatic stress or hypervigilance, being prepared to deal with things takes some of that hypervigilance down. If I already know how to react to a situation, maybe I'm not so hypervigilant in the situation. So It's a good question. I would argue it helps. I could see maybe causing some paranoia if people get too far down the rabbit hole, though. We know those people. Knowledge is power. Yep. It's a tricky thing about alcohol, Matthew. I appreciate you being able to, talk about that. What a lot of people don't realize is alcohol is a depressant. So we drink it to go to bed. And then the problem is, though, we've depressed our system so badly that we may not sleep well or deal with dreams, which is one of the ways that in the third stage of sleep, or REM sleep, that we deal with processing memories effectively. So I'm reading these last two, and then we get out of here. Yep, prepping helps out originals. I'd say for me, Dr. P, it does too. I'd say it would. And then post-job PTSD, triggered by news and protests. I was just watching a video earlier today about a group of individuals called the REBT Advocates, and these are, especially one of them was directly trained by Albert Ellis, who invented REBT, and that was the topic was how do you deal with nothing but negative news all the time? And the behavioral solution was turn the stupid thing off, right? The cognitive solution was more, am I inundating myself with this, and is this reality? Like, clearly we're seeing things that are going on, but are we being over inundated by things that aren't necessarily a true perception or percentage of reality? I think that's worth diving into. So yeah, I hate that it's been a struggle for you. The Russian Viking bot. Well, as long as it says Viking in there, I'm in. Started cutting herself and her friends doing similar things. Two ways to go here. Cutting can absolutely be a sign of mental health problems. I never understood cutting before I got into mental health. I really, I'll be first to admit, I never understood it. But as I got further into it, started to see that people will do it for a couple of reasons. One, if they're doing it for mental health reason, cutting makes them feel something when they're numb. And two, cutting makes them feel pain somewhere other than when they're currently feeling it, whether that be physical or emotional. So I absolutely believe that there is some cool thing to do about some people's cutting and taking pills. I would never just write it off to that by any means. I want to be vigilant about trying to figure out why we're doing this. But unfortunately, I have seen, especially previously working in the school system before having a private practice, I absolutely would see some copying. So character matters is talking about kratom. That's something that, honestly, there's another thing I hear a lot about lately, but I haven't had time to look into. I'm very interested in that. I will check my email, Mordoc, I promise you. Yep, Danielle. So let's see. You guys have been listening to me for more than an hour ramble on. So I appreciate it. Thanks for the thumbs up. I'm assuming that most of you have already subscribed is how you got the notification for this. If you're watching this later, please hit that. It does let me know that I need to do more of these. Otherwise, it just feels like rambling for an hour. So, all right. Thanks, everybody.